And welcome to the Performance Leadership webinar series. In this iteration, I will be talking about the Unbeatable planning system, which I developed about 15 years or so ago in the early 2000s. Excuse me, when I was managing multiple projects, had multiple accountabilities, and I put together a system based heavily on the Franklin Covey planning system. I had attended a workshop of theirs back in the late 90s called it's called What Matters Most, which is a great title because that's really what time management is really all about. And so I took their system and then I added some of my own tweaks to it, and have been using it ever since, off, so that I could really appreciate how useful it was and how unbeatable it is. And I kept circling back to it. And about 5 years ago, a client of mine asked, well, what system do you use? He saw that I had my planner in front of me, and he said, well, how do you go about managing all that there is to manage? And so I thought, well, I can share that with you. I had to, take it all out of my head and put it down into a document and shared it with them. And a few other people have asked over the years, and many very recently. And I thought it's actually been about a year ago. I said, well, I'm going to put this on video and just post it, and people can see it, because I think there's something about the visual component that really helps make it stick better. And it's also an opportunity for some Q&A along the way here. So if you have questions as we go along, please put them in the chat, and I'll either answer them at the end or I'll answer them as we go along. Okay. So I have a little PowerPoint to go along with it. This is the visual portion. It's not just looking at me, because I'm getting tired of looking at myself here on the screen. So let's head on in there. So here we are. It's as I mentioned, the Unbeatable planning system, and I call it that because I really haven't found anything along the way. I mentioned how I've gone away from it and come back, and gone away and come back, as I've tried to find online tools that will do the same thing, that will be as valuable. And what I have noticed about many of the say the to-do list apps out there is it's really easy to add stuff to your to-do list that way, but it becomes really difficult, or it has become difficult for me to manage all of that in a meaningful way. In the digital world, you can have a to-do list that is pretty close to infinitely long, and it's out of sight, out of mind. Well, with this system, you don't have that going on, and I'll say more about that as we get into it. So, what is the need for planning? I often ask when I'm leading a group of people, how many in the room are planners? And I'll get, some people's hands will shoot straight up in the air because they live by planning. They get the value of planning. And then, I'll say, I'll ask the follow-up question. I just did this yesterday, and I'll ask a little bit closer, who kind of dabbles in planning, and people kind of, they don't feel they're really good planners. And I think part of it is having a system, and that's what I want to share with you today. But I want to go a little bit more deeply into why is planning important. We all have places that we want to get to. We have destinations in mind that we want to achieve, our goals down at the end of the road there. And without proper planning, those goals aren't quite as clear. It's a little bit foggy. You can see a short way down the road, but much beyond that, it gets a little bit foggy, and it's really easy to get off course that way. And then sometimes the future just looks completely blurry altogether, and we don't even know where we're going. We're just dealing with what's right in front of us, and we have this sort of heavy or noisy or overwhelming, something in there, confusion about all there is to do. And we know from experience that things are falling off. We're dropping things. We're not following up with people like we know that we should. So this is a system of integrity. Of having integrity around your projects, having integrity around your business, projects within your business, your own goals, your own projects, and more. And we'll get into those other details along the way here. But it's really a way of creating more certainty in your life. It's creating a more certainty in your future, and helping you to manage your commitments and your promises. If you've worked with me before, you know that I like to say, who you are is your word. It's what you give your word to. And if you're not keeping your word, or not managing your word, not honoring your word, your performance is going to take a hit. And your sense of yourself takes a hit when you miss an appointment, when you miss a meeting, when you fall short of a goal because you didn't do what you intended to do to get there. It takes a hit. It robs you of your power. So that, to me, is what is essential about planning. So we'll get right down into the nuts and bolts of it. So here's what you need to get started, and this is the foundational component here. It's a 2-page per day planner. So it's a paper-based planning system. It's the old-fashioned way. I don't know if old-fashioned is really the right word. It's kind of an old-fashioned phrase, but it's old school. Maybe that's more updated. But it's an actual physical paper planner, and it's 2 pages per day, and that's what you want to key in on. That's why I have it in quotes there. And there's 2 products here that I've mentioned. It's the Day Runner, and the item number is there, and then the Franklin Covey, which is what I mentioned, how I got started with this particular tool, and that's the model number there. Now, I did a search on both of these this morning. The Day Runner you can find on Amazon for about $25 for an entire year. And I also advocate I didn't put it on here, but a letter size, an 8.5 by 11 inch size. Here's my planner here. It's in a nice little regular off-the-shelf binder. I've got 3 months worth of planning pages in here: last month, next month, and this month. Not in that order: last month, this month, and next month. But they're 8.5 by 11 because you're going to want to have plenty of room to write, and that's what the 2 pages are for. You have a page on the left, which is on the left side here, shows, well, let me jump ahead here. So this is about what the Day Runner style looks like. And then this is the one that I use, which is Franklin Covey. It's a little bit more stylish. With Franklin Covey, you get, or Franklin Planner, I think is the website, franklinplanner.com. You can get a little bit more stylish. There's all kinds of different styles, and this is the one that I use. But it's about $45 or $50 for the same thing. So you can experiment with that. Here's a little screen grab I got off of Amazon. Like I said, it's about $23, and then you'll have your shipping, unless you have Prime, and then that's covered, but there will be tax on top of that. And then this is from the Franklin Covey site. You can see here it's $45. Now, what I want to highlight here on the Franklin Covey is they've got, I don't think I have a pointer possibility here in the, I'm sorry, I got distracted by the chat. Let me know if you're having any trouble hearing, or actually let me know that you can hear me. I did a test and it seemed to be working fine, but I see that somebody's having trouble logging in. This will be on video later if for some reason you have to leave before it ends, or in case we have some sort of a technical glitch or you have one on your end, and that'll be sent out further. But the word monarch here in the Franklin Covey represents that it's 8.5 by 11. They've also got smaller versions. I highly recommend you start with the larger version, and then after a year or in the middle of the year, you can get another version and do what works with you or works for you. Because I'll admit the 8.5 by 11 size is a little bit bigger and bulkier, and if you're going to be moving around a lot, that may make it a little bit more difficult. But it's what I recommend you start with. And let's look at the pages now in more detail. I know it's hard to see the detail here, so I'm highlighting various portions of it. This is the 2 pages per day, and it's opened up. This is what this represents. And on the very far left side is a place to record your actions, your to-dos, your tasks, things that you want to do that day. Next to that this is a timeline where you're writing in your appointments, your events, your occasions, as I call them, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. But basically, everything that you want to manage in your life has to have an occasion in which to do it. If you were throwing a party, you would want to have an occasion in which to have that party, say, you know, 6 to 11 p.m. or whatever that is. So this is a timeline in which to place those appointments, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. I'm just showing you the anatomy of the planner right now. It's 2 pages per day. And then on the right side, the right page, is your diary or your notes section, a log of what you accomplished that day, what you did that day, any decisions that you made that day. So it's a place to document the activities of the day, your phone conversations and whatnot, everything in one place. That's one thing that the Franklin Covey approach stresses heavily. Have everything in one place, not scattered all over the place. I'm sure you can appreciate the logic and the benefit of that, and it takes a little bit of rigor and commitment and dedication to be able to do that. So that's the anatomy of it. Now we'll dive into what it's like to get started in this system. So number one, we're not talking about goals and milestones in this program. I'm making an assumption that you already have goals and milestones. You have activities that you know you need to do to accomplish your goals. So I'm not going to go over that. If you do want to discuss that, get in touch with me and we can meet and go over, or I'll be doing a future webinar on how to do that, or a live workshop. Certainly do those as well. Excuse me. I also recommend you start on a weekend. Start this, before your week begins, so you can get the week laid out, and you'll have some time in which to do that, probably on your weekend, or make time on your weekend before your week begins, even if it's early Monday morning, if your week starts on Monday. The next thing is gather all your to-do lists and your online calendar, if you use one, which I know that most people do, and I know there are some that don't. I know people that just have a calendar, the 1 month, and they write their appointments in there. There's not, the whole day is represented by a 1-inch square. That's not this system at all. That's a calendar. It's not a planning system. I know you can use it for planning, but it's not unbeatable like this one is. So gather everything that you do. So your online to-do lists, Evernote, Trello, Todoist, Wonderlist. There's many, many, many of them. So wherever you capture your to-dos, your sticky notes, get all of them together so you have them available to you. All right. So we're going to start with the to-do list portion of it. So as I mentioned, you may have a yellow pad, your sticky notes, your Post-it notes, and all your various apps where you may track and record what it is that you want to do, you need to do, you've promised to do, or just good ideas. And that's often what we capture and we never get around to doing. So we definitely want to incorporate that. And again, I'll be getting into that more as we go along. We're just getting the pieces put together here. So gather all your to-do lists, and then go to, remember the diary notes log section, go to the nearest Sunday. So if you're doing your planning on a weekend, either, if it's Saturday, it's the next day, the Sunday page, or if you're doing this on Sunday, it's that date. So why Sunday? Because you're generally not working on that day, so you're not capturing any notes. This is a place where you're going to dump all of your to-dos, everything, almost everything. You're going to dump everything that's just on all of these various ways that you use for capturing your tasks, your to-dos, your action items. All right, and then there it is. Turn to Sunday's page, and then we'll zoom in a little bit here. So here we are on Sunday. Don't worry about the date. I know that may not be, it's in the past, right? So, but it's your Sunday page. And then what you're going to do is just dump everything onto that page. When I said almost everything, the only thing you're not going to put here is things you're going to do on a certain date. And then go ahead and advance to that date in the planner and write those down there on that left-hand column where the action is, the to-do list for that particular day, on the very left-hand column of that day. But everything else put in here, just dump it in here so it's all on that one page. If you've got more that'll fit on that page, you might want to, make 2 columns. That's what I'll say, and maybe rethink some of the things that you're really you think you're going to do, or store those somewhere else. We'll get into that. I'm sure they'll fit. For most of you, they'll fit on that page. Let's see. So just dump them all there. Everything that you don't have a date by when it needs to happen, or well, some things we have by when it needs to happen, but we actually need to start working on it sooner. So if you don't know when you're going to work on it, put it on this list. So this is the first step. It's taking all of the tasks that you have on all of your to-do lists and writing them down on this Sunday page. Yes, using a pen or a pencil and writing them down. Now, this is a key aspect of what makes this system unbeatable, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. All right, so also, this is a place for you to capture things that may show up during the week. Oh, I really want to read that book. And so you might write that book title down here. And so it's a place to capture, and it's a place to store all of the items that you haven't made a commitment to do by a certain, or on, I should say, a certain date. So you want to capture, you want to store. And then the next part of this is some of these things are good ideas, and some of these things will be things that you'll commit yourself to, or they may switch from one to another. So what I mean by a good idea is, yeah, like reading a book, reading a particular book. Yeah, it's a good idea. I think I want to read that book one of these days. But you haven't made a commitment to it. You haven't made a promise to it, but you want to keep it available to yourself. So this is a place to recognize that everything in this list is just a good idea. If you're fully committed to doing it, I recommend that you then set a date for when to get started on it. If it's a project, break it down into pieces, and when are you going to get started? Your very first step will be plan the project. So plan the project as an action item on a particular date at a particular time. So again, this Sunday is a place to capture everything, or dump everything, and then capture what might come up that you want to flag for future decision on whether to commit to it or not. Okay, so that's the first step. The next step is to grab your phone and pull up your calendar on your phone, and then we're going to address the next column over. So grab your calendar, and I put this image on here because it's pretty representative of what it's going to look like on paper. You're going to take all these little boxes that are on your phone and transfer them to your the timeline portion of your planner on that particular day. And draw little boxes, but only draw them halfway across the column. I actually divided this up on the top here. I just did a little mock-up here. But just on the left-hand side of that calendar portion, it'll be the right-hand side of the left-hand page, although that sounds confusing. Well, it'll make sense. It'll sink in because I'm going to show you this drawing a lot more times in this program here. But just draw the box halfway and write in what the appointment is, and do this for, let me see, let me go to my next slide here. I'm going to get myself out of place. Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say. Do this for the upcoming 2 weeks. So look out, transfer those appointments for the next 2 weeks, the upcoming week and the week after. And what this does, and another thing that makes this process unbeatable, is as you're doing this, you're creating a template. You're walking yourself through the next couple of weeks, the upcoming week and the week after that. And what you'll notice, one of the things that you'll notice as you're doing this is, oh, that's next week. Oh, I need to prepare for that. And so it won't surprise you like, oh my gosh, that's tomorrow. You'll have the opportunities to set up some tasks ahead of time so things don't surprise you or come upon you. In addition to that, besides just the surprise aspect, you're laying out the tracks, as I like to think. You're laying the tracks for your future. And then you're rolling along the tracks as you go through. You've thought through everything as you've written it down. And this is where the writing aspect is unbeatable versus just putting it in your phone or in your calendar. Now, the phone is a great capture tool. It's unbeatable for that, right? Because it's portable, it's right there. It's this pulling your 3-ring binder out and doing that may be a little bit more cumbersome. So that's one place where technology trumps it. But then for the planning part, that's the capture part of it. The planning part of it is laying it out in your calendar. So do this for the upcoming 2 weeks. The next step then is over here on the left-hand side, the action list. Take anything off of your Sunday page and put on your action list for that particular day, for the day that you're going to do them. And then as you can see here, I've added a priority list here, A's and B's, and you might have some C's as well. Just use that system for that. So an A is something you're absolutely going to do that day. You're committed to it. Nothing is going to get in the way of you doing that. So obviously you don't want to have a lot of those. B's are things that that if you don't do them, there will be an impact. But it's not absolutely mission critical that you get it you get it done today. Like I have schedule a haircut on here. I don't know if you can read that, but that's not absolutely mission critical. But that's your prioritizing. You know, if you want to take it a step further, transfer these into the actual times, and I'll get back into that a little bit later as I'm thinking. I got ahead of myself a little bit, but this is getting things set up. If you know you're going to do certain things on a certain date, as I mentioned before, your good idea list is on Sunday, but things you know you're going to act on a certain day, don't put them on that list from all your other to-do lists. Go ahead and put it on the day that it actually is going to happen, or that you've planned it to happen. It's got to happen. You know, like calling somebody back, returning a phone call, for example. Okay, so let's see. Now you're set up. All right. So in review, you've transferred all your good idea tasks to your Sunday notes page. You've added your commitments. So remember, there's good ideas versus commitments. You've added your commitments to your daily task list on the day you're going to do them, and you've drawn boxes for your appointments and any tasks that you decide that you're actually going to do. So there, you're set up. You've got your calendar appointments, your to-do list. So the summary. So that's it for the setup. Now we're going into the planning process. So this is the sort of ongoing part of the process. You're going to be doing daily planning, weekly planning, and monthly planning. And again, we're not talking about goals in this, but that would be more annual planning, you might think, or beyond, right? To create what your long-term and short-term goals. But this is the planning process as you're working in that. You've got your goal actions translated into your planning process, or you've captured them in some way in your planning. So start with the daily part of it. It's daily planning and tracking, and this is what the right-hand side of that 2-page per day part is for. It's also tracking and documenting your activities in a way that has that information be available to you when you need it. So we'll be describing how that works as we go along here. All right, so let's see. Daily planning and tracking. The next step is, okay, this looks familiar, right? This is what I showed you before. You've got your appointments in here, and you've got your tasks. And so the first step really is, I gave it away a little bit earlier, prioritize them. What absolutely is going to happen today? Come hell or high water over my dead body, whatever, grotesque or gruesome metaphor you want to use for that, but it's absolutely going to happen. That's the way you want to treat it. It's mission critical. Now, sometimes they don't happen because of outside circumstances, but that's how you're holding it. That's how you're holding it, and that's the context in which you're holding it. And as I started to mention earlier, better move those into actual appointments. So when it comes time when, here's a whole big open spot on my calendar, you're going to do one of two things with either one of these systems. One, you're going to pick an A because it's important to you, but sometimes those A's I don't feel like doing, right? And so your tendency is like, well, maybe I'll just schedule my haircut instead because that's easy. If you put times on them, you're deepening that commitment. Okay, not only did I make a promise to do the first draft of my newsletter, but I'm going to do it at noon, right? While I'm eating lunch or whatever. But I'm going to do it at noon. So you're making the commitment a little bit more. You're putting more teeth into it. So that's a better way to do it. But I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. I'm actually moved in this direction myself. And boy, it just makes it easy because you're not making decisions all the way through the day. You've made those decisions already when you're relaxed in your easy chair with a cup of coffee or whatever, rather than sort of in the heat of the battle of your day-to-day operations. All right, so that's the first step in the daily planning on day one. Okay. So why do I have that slide in there twice? What am I missing here? Okay, better move them over. So there you are. The next step for you is to Let's see. Okay, looks like I duplicated a couple of slides here. Sorry about that. All right, now we're going to move over to the right-hand side, and this is the star of the show for your being at work during your day. What you're going to do here is document all of those activities that happened during the day, including phone calls that showed up. And so the notation I'm using here is it's a 1 with a circle, a 2 with a circle, 3, 4, 5, 6, just in the order that they happened that day. So this is the right-hand page. And as soon as you start on an activity, you're going to jump over to the left-hand page and draw that same notation, a 1 with a circle around it, next to that activity. I know these two pages aren't in agreement, but don't worry about that. It's just symbols here, symbology. So you've just started on that activity that you've planned on, and then the arrow represents how much time you actually spent doing that. Okay, so this is an appointment, a breakfast meeting I've got here. It took 1 hour, and then I started task number 2. And just going back to the previous page, there's number 2, and then the notes that go along with it. And if in the case of a phone call, you may be documenting decisions that were made, promises that were made, things that need to be followed up on. And this is the importance of the tracking system. You may just want to make notes about if it was just work you're doing on your own, your marketing or something like that. There may be things you want to document in there. It may be just documenting that you did it. And going back over here, you have a notation of the duration of time you spent doing that. Now, if you look at these circles right here, I know you probably can't see my cursor, but there's a 4 and a 5 that don't have arrows drawn on. Those are like phone calls or something that came in that didn't have a long duration, but they're worth noting because there may be some action to take as a result of those. And then you would make some further notations on what those activities are. Okay, so this is why we have a 2-page per day system. So on the left, I'm tracking what I actually spent my time doing. So that's what I'm actually spending my time doing on the right-hand side of this timeline versus my my scheduled, what I planned on doing it, because sometimes they get a little bit wonky. They get out of sync. So this is your pro forma, and this is your actual on the right-hand side of that column. It becomes very useful when you want to go back and look. So this is your documentation of how you spent your time. All right. So that's what your first day is going to look like. Okay, here's a tip. In the notes section, include, if it's somebody you're calling, include the phone number of the person you're calling. Just write it down. You'll have it for easy reference. I know it's in your phone, but sometimes it's easier just to have it written down when you refer back to it at some point in the future. And also write the purpose or intended outcome of the call. And this is a great practice just to kind of get your head in that space of, why am I calling this person? What's my purpose? What am I looking for in this conversation? And it will have your conversation be more powerful, have more integrity, and you'll be certain, or you'll have the reminder of, it'll be right there in front of you, of why you're making that phone call, why you're having that conversation. And then the second part here is, if I got voicemail, I make a quick little notation, VMLM, voicemail, left message. Or if I didn't leave a message because I've already left several voicemail messages, I'll say NM, no message, left voicemail, no message. Then I have that notation for myself. If I'm doing that, then I'm going to schedule my call back immediately. So I'm going to turn to the future page in my planner, whether it's tomorrow or the next week or whatever it is, and make that notation in my daily task list. So I always have that next step already documented and ready to go. Okay, so that's the end of the first day of your using the system. Before the next day begins, you're going to review that day. Okay, so you're going to go back and look at that previous day, and you're going to process the tasks. So in the left-hand side here, I'm going to make a little check mark in the very left column here, and these columns are included in the planning system, the Franklin Covey and the day runner. Place for prioritization and a place for how to notate them. And I've put a little key up here on different ways to process. So if it's complete, you put a check mark. If it's something you're not going to do, either because it's no longer relevant anymore or you just I don't want to, you put an X in there. They're showing D, delegated. You delegated it to somebody else. That's going to require a follow-up task if you're delegating it, obviously. Or draw an arrow if you're forwarding it. Well, I didn't get a chance to do that today, but I'm still going to do it. I'm still committed to it, so I'm going to move it to the following day or someday in the future. Don't mark it forwarded until you've already gone ahead and done that, because for me, sometimes I'll go ahead and mark it, and then the phone will ring, and then I won't have made that other step. So always write it down first, and then go back and make the notation. Okay, so that's your, and then this big black dot here is it's in process. You're working on it. Okay, so you've begun it, but it's not complete yet. So that's processing the tasks, making sure everything has a notation for it, so it's getting the day complete. And then just looking at the right-hand side, reviewing my notes. Okay, was there anything that I missed? Are there any activities that I need to that I didn't schedule during the day that I need to make sure now get scheduled? So in my first note here, I've got, I spoke with Cheryl, call next week to schedule an appointment. Oh, okay, well, I didn't do that, so I need to make sure that I go ahead and do that. Or maybe it's just a good idea. She recommended that I talk to so and so. Well, I don't know when I'm going to do that, so I'm just going to put it on my Sunday page because it's a good idea. I'm not committed to it yet. Okay, so this is reviewing your day. Another tip: when you schedule a follow-up task, make a notation that refers back to your original notes using this MDE format. So let me back up a second here. So I've got, nothing in here is very lengthy, but let's say I spoke with Cheryl and I captured a lot of information. Maybe she wants me to write a proposal, and the proposal needs to address specific things, and I've made note of them there. Okay, well, I'm not going to be able to work on that proposal this week. I'm going to start working on it Monday. So I'm going to make a note I'm going to make an appointment, in this case, in my calendar, because it's really important, that at 9 a.m., from 9 to 10, I'm going to start working on that proposal. And in that task over here, I'm going to make a notation following that task in parentheses. Now, bear with me here. I'm jumping back and forth a little bit. But what that notation is this M, D, and E. So in parentheses, I'm going to write the month that I want to refer back to. So if I've got an example. So the month, the day, and the event. The event represents the number in my notes here. So the month, as an example that I'm using, is, so example, on July 15th, the task reads, follow-up call to Jane. And this is the notation here, 7-5-3. Okay, so the notes from my last call are on the July 5th page, and it's the third event, my little 3 with the circle here. So I'm going to know to refer back to that. And every time I schedule a follow-up task, I have this notation in there. So I'm always able to go back and see the whole chain of the conversation or the activity. So everything is right there and easy to get to. That's the critical component here, is the efficiency part of it, okay? So you may want to listen to this again or watch this part of it again, because I said I kind of jumped around a little bit, but it's really critical for chaining these things together so that you have them available to you. All right, so that's the daily planning. You're reviewing the previous day, and this is just an everyday part of your daily planning process. Now we're going to go from daily to weekly. Okay, so weekly is very similar to what you already did in your initial setup. Okay, so it's going to be, you're going to process, this is a new part, you're going to process Sunday's good idea tasks. Okay, remember, you're going to go back to that page, that Sunday that had everything on it, and you're going to go through those, and oh yeah, I did that, and oh yeah, I did that. You're going to process those. You're going to check them off if you did them. You're going to forward them if you did not do them, and they still live like good ideas, right? You're going to process those, and as I mentioned here, and that means move them to the following Sunday page. Okay, you're going to move them to the next Sunday, which is probably tomorrow if you're doing this on Saturday, or it's today if you're doing your weekly planning on Sunday. And again, don't mark it forwarded until you've actually copied it so you don't drop the ball midstream. Let's see. Now, here's another aspect of what makes the system unbeatable is these good idea tasks. You'll find after a few weeks or months that, man, I keep having to transfer the same activity. Well, guess what's going to happen? You're either going to get off your butt and do it, or you're going to decide it's not a good idea after all, and you're going to stop forwarding it. So it'll clean up your good idea list, and you're going to just take it off. And if it was really a good idea, it's going to come back later, right? You'll remember it. It'll stick with you. So if it wasn't meant to be, sort of that kind of a thing. So it seems cumbersome and tedious, but it's supposed to be to make sure that you're going to do one of two things. It's like, I'm tired of forwarding this, I'm going to do it. Or I'm tired of forwarding this, I'm going to exit out, I'm not going to do it. Okay, so that's the first step in the weekly planning process once you've already begun. Then review all the days from the previous week and sweep up all the crumbs. So there may be things that you missed in your daily planning, or there will be days that you didn't do your review. Okay, so this is an opportunity to clean up all the crumbs, to make sure it's clean and tidy. The week that you've left behind is pristine. All right. And then third, transfer all the appointments from your online calendar. So this is the part that you did during your setup. So update any new appointments that showed up in the upcoming week, and then you're going to add the following week, because that's now blank because you did 2 weeks and now you're in the middle of that, and then you're going to add the next week to that. Again, that helps you and here's a little analogy I use. It helps you lay the rails, lay the tracks for your future. So all you're doing is following the tracks. You've already got a mental model of what your future is going to look like. This helps you be ready for that. And let me go back to the week. Let me make sure I got everything. So transfer your appointments. Oh, and then review your Sunday good idea tasks and schedule some. Make a commitment. That's what scheduling them means, as you see fit. So I kind of jumped ahead a little there because I know I didn't mention some, like, this is the value of this part of the system, is you're gonna get tired of writing these things down. And an online task list, oh, you can just keep forwarding. It's kind of like a snooze alarm. Oh, you can just keep hitting snooze. Well, that doesn't work, right? If you're constantly forwarding a task, just with a simple click of a button, that's what has your to-do list, your online to-do list, be approach infinity. And nobody wants that, right? Because it gets like, I got too much to do. All right. So you'll review those Sunday tasks. Sometimes, the good ideas will become commitments because of the time is coming up. Let's say it's, I need to decide on my Christmas gifts. All right, well, here it is. Now is a really good time. Here we are, mid-November. It might even be kind of too late, depending on what you're putting together. But it's a really good time to get on that now. So then it becomes a commitment versus just a good idea. It might have been a good idea in April, but I think you get the picture. All right. So laying the rails. All right. Then monthly planning. All right. This is sweeping up the crumbs as well. So go back through the entire month. Make sure that the days were all accounted for. Weeks were all accounted for. Now, as you go through the system, don't be surprised if there's a whole week goes by where you didn't do any of this. Okay, so this is an opportunity to get back in integrity with the system, to get back on track. So this is where you want to sweep up all the crumbs. You want to make sure nothing's left behind, so that your month is entirely complete. Review each day for anything that you missed from your action list, your note pages, and your Sunday pages. All right. Next is this is a useful way. It's creating an index for the month. So at the beginning of your monthly planning pages, I don't know if you'll be able to see it here, but you've got a blank page. It's just a notes page at the beginning of every month. There's got a little tab on here for December, and use that for the month that just closed, and create an index. And you'll go through your month, and if there's anything significant on a particular day that you're going to want to get back to, it may have been the first meeting with a potential client, or you'll just have a handful of these, just a small number of things that I think I might want to get back to that, and this will be just a quick and easy way for me to get there. Again, it's also having you review your entire month and just have that in mind of what you were able to accomplish, and pick up anything that might have gotten dropped along the way. So each month should have a cover page or a blank page. Use this to note any special dates you might want to get quick access to. That's basically what I just said. And then review your goals. So you have your annual goals at the end of the month. Great time to look at, all right, am I on track to meet my monthly goals? Have I met my monthly milestone? And if not, I might want to make an adjustment to a strategy, maybe increase the amount that I'm spending on my Facebook ads, or get to the gym more frequently, or something like that, and make an adjustment to your strategy, and then add any of those strategy adjustments, add them as tasks into your action lists. So this is part of your monthly planning, and then archive the last month and archive the month before last and add the next month. So, for example, here it is, November, or it just became November. It was October, and so I'm going to archive September, so that I've only got 3 months in my system. You know, you don't want to be carrying 12 months of paper around. You know, 2 pages per day. It's front and back, so you're going to be, that's 350 pages you're carrying around with you, and it's heavyweight paper. It's bulky and heavy, so you only want to carry 3 months around with you. In the back are full calendars. You can make notes for things that are way out there that aren't in there. But generally, you're going to find that all you really need access to is last month, obviously the month you're currently in, and then next month. So you can write future appointments in there as needed. So at the turn of the month, you're going to archive month before last. So we moved into November. You then archive September and add December from, you've got your binder. Here's mine up here. Here's all the future planning pages that I've got, the archived ones here, and then the upcoming ones right there. All right, there you go. So you're carrying 3 around with you. So part of the monthly planning, going back a slide, archive the month before last and add the upcoming month. So you always have that available to you. All right, so that is it in a nutshell. I also have this documented if you want to read through it, but it's not an easy read, and that's really why I wanted to do this in an online format, to have you be able to experience. If you have any questions or comments, I'll invite you to put them in the chat box, or ask any questions. I think you have both questions and chat available to you. Let me now, while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions, let me now tell you about kind of what's next. So to supplement or back this up, or have, what I want to say about this, to embellish this, I'm doing a live workshop on time management next month on December 7th at, oh my gosh, the time isn't even on here. It's at noon. Oh, there it is, but you can't read it. Probably. It's very faint on my screen. So from 12 to 1:30, it's a workshop. It's called Time for a Change. And I touch upon the planning system in there, but it really looks at, what is our relationship to time? If we look at things that we commonly say around time, like I ran out of time, I need to make time for this or that, or I need to save time. That's really not a role. You really can't make time. Have you noticed? You can't make time. But we speak about time in that way. And when you really look at it, you can't even manage time. Time just flows, right? So all you really do is you're managing your priorities, right? What are you going to do with the time that you have? And that's a big part of why this system, the system is a big part of how that works. So it's a 90-minute workshop. It's $27, a measly $27. That's really just to cover my expenses for having the workshop. But it's a great time as we're moving into the new year to take advantage of this planning system, the Unbeatable planning system, and to really get into it, get your questions answered, and shift the way that you think about time so that it doesn't occur for you as running out, because that's just a scarcity conversation. All right, so the link to that is Time for a Change, 12/17. So that's December of 2017. That's how I designate that. Time for a Change, 1217.eventbrite.com. I'll also be sending out an email for you. You can't click on anything here. This is just a screenshot from the Eventbrite page. So I don't see any questions, which means either I put everybody to sleep or I did a really great job of explaining how this went. So please do. You should get a link to be able to review this again at your leisure. I'm very happy that I was able to keep it to 45 minutes. That was my target. And I absolutely nailed it. So that was really wonderful. So thank you, Renee. I appreciate that comment. Feel free to get in touch with me through this mechanism or via email with any further questions you have, with any suggestions that you have for additional webinar content that you'd like to see covered. Maybe a particular challenge that you're having in your business or your life, or something that you just like to have more like a different viewpoint on. And I will assemble a webinar just for you, just for that need, and I'm sure other people will find it valuable as well. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for being part of this. I'm actually starting to enjoy talking to this little webcam on top of my computer, knowing that there's actually people out there listening. So again, thank you, and please share this opportunity with the people that you know that might benefit from such a system. For people that say things like, oh, I need to make time, I need to save time, I'm running out of time, people that are victims of time. So, okay, thank you very much. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in the very near future.